After 9 years of being on the platform, I just sold my last active listed vehicle on the Turo platform, and it is a crazy feeling. So, is this the end of the road for me and Turo? Well, the answer is a little bit complicated. It's a yes and a no, and I just can't believe that I've spent 9 years hosting on the platform. It's been a crazy, wild, fun, and amazing ride. But we're going to go over what is next for myself and a major question that has been coming to me from so many of my host friends who have purchased cars in 2021, 2022, and 2023. They have been talking to me about, how do I get out of this car that I'm so upside down on value on because the prices were so crazy in these last couple years. So I'm going to share some tips on that as well. All right, guys. So it's been a wild ride. And in fact, I didn't actually plan on selling my Audi TT that I had listed on the platform this past weekend, but I got such a great offer from a local dealership that I could not pass it up, and I had to really take the time and take them up on the opportunity, essentially, because as we know, it's hard to get out of cars without ending up with any sort of negative equity or being upside down on a loan or having to come out of pocket. But because Audi TTs are no longer in production, these cars have gone up in value, and I got a crazy good deal. And so when the opportunity was right, I had to take it. So this was not really anything that was particularly or specifically planned. It sort of just happened. So a lot of you guys have been asking me, what's next for me? What do I plan on doing? What are my next moves? Now, I will start off by saying something you guys have probably heard me say a lot on this channel is that I'm definitely a very math-driven person. So in college and high school, I loved calculus and statistics. And so I'm always very numbers driven, and the math always has to make sense to me on anything. And especially when it comes to business, because the outcome that we're all looking for is always income. And so I look back at my Turo journey, and it's just been amazing. It's something I had never planned on getting into, but I always loved cars from a young age. It just happened to be right time, right place. And I just went deep into the Turo business, earned a ton of money while doing it, shared my autobiographical journey, if you will, along the way, and it's just been a fun ride. Will I be exiting the platform as a whole? Well, probably not. I don't think. I have my eye on a couple of cars, and hopefully I'll be making a couple purchases in the upcoming months. And I also have some co-hosting opportunities that I want to explore. Now, of course, I have this amazing Turo profile that I have built up for years. Thousands of hosted trips, literally amazing reviews. I mean, I've just have relished in doing this business and providing that experience and providing my guests with a great experience and enjoying these cars myself. For those of you that are newer on the channel, I mean, I've had pretty close to about 50 cars throughout the years. So I've had just so many experiences that have been incredible. I've had crazy cool cars. I've think over the years, I probably had about 7 to 8 Corvettes between the C7s and the C8s. I've had Porsches, Vanderhall Venices, Polaris Slingshots, every type of BMW and Mercedes-Benz you could think of, and just everything in between. And it's just been awesome. So I still just love the experience of hosting cars and being able to buy cars that I like and that I think people are going to enjoy and not necessarily have that expense, when you list those cars, and you can enjoy them yourselves as well. So yeah, we will see. It's very open-ended for me at the minute. But one of the things that I've also been focusing on for almost a year and a half now, which some of you, if you're newer, you might not know this about me, but prior to doing Turo, I was in tech, I was in software development, and one of the other things that I did during that time period in my previous life after college is that I would teach kids ages 5 through 10 how to code. So I've always been very into tech and software, and teaching kids has been a huge kind of passion of mine. And so in the last year and a half, I've really have sort of dug back into that passion of mine and really working on getting back into developing these curriculums for kids, especially these days when tech is taking off, AI is taking off. And it's really impacting children specifically. And so I'm just trying to, reach back into myself and kind of, dive back into that type of stuff. So my content has always been autobiographical in the sense that I always just make videos about what I'm actually doing in my real life. So I'm not a content creator by any means. Rather, I'm just somebody who is trying to share my experiences on how I've built my businesses. And I really wish I was into making videos back when I built my software company, because that was just such a cool, fun, and wild ride. So I will definitely share whatever I do next. But in the meantime, we are still heavily deep into the Turo world, something that I love doing. I love my amazing community that I have developed. And so, I'm not really going anywhere in terms of sharing Turo information and the things that are happening. And hopefully I'm going to get into some co-hosting deals very soon. And so, yeah, I will continue to bring as much knowledge that I have, as many experiences that I have. And, especially for the rest of this year, my goal is to really leave it all out on the table. So hopefully for those of you that start your journeys in the future or are starting now, that information is readily available to you. And I think Alex Hormozy said it best when he said one of the best things that you can do with your life is to share everything that you know and everything that you've learned in hopes that it will help somebody else. So that is something that I will continue to do. But 9 years is wild. I would have never thought that I would have done something like this for 9 years with all these cars. What a fun and wild ride it's been. And I just love talking to you guys in the comment section. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. So let's dive back into a very hot topic with that said. So a lot of my host friends have been reaching out to me about, getting out of cars that they are stuck in. So unfortunately what happened, and part of what has also created that gap in acquiring vehicles for myself, for my Turo business, and what has eventually led to me sort of selling off my fleet versus adding to my fleet, is car prices. So we have really hammered the subject into the ground over the last couple years, but in 2021, 2022, and 2023, these were really bizarre years for the automotive industry with such diminishing supply due to 2020. Prices went through the roof, right? There was that time that we went through where people were literally selling cars 20-30% above MSRP because that's how much demand there was and there just wasn't enough supply. Now, unfortunately, we are experiencing the repercussions of that time now because all these people bought cars. And unfortunately, a lot of my host friends included bought cars at very high prices. And now that you have accumulated, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 miles on these cars by having them listed on the Turo platform, it's extremely hard to get out of these loans because you have so much negative equity, which is why on this channel, I really caution heavily against purchasing cars where the depreciation and the value on these cars doesn't measure up to your loan that you owe on it. So you always have to anticipate 2-3 years down the line and make sure that you are purchasing a vehicle at a very good deal, typically 15 to 20% off of MSRP to mitigate any negative equity and depreciation in the future. This is so key. I have a video that I made a couple years ago called The Only Formula You Need to Run Your Turo Business, and it's literally a mathematical equation because of my love of math that is going to walk you through exactly how you analyze, a car deal so that it really fits the profile for what you need on Turo. And you can find that video link right up here and it's going to walk you through that, right? It's a little boring and nerdy, but it is so crucial. I promise you, if you follow that, you will not end up in these positions. Now, typically when you end up in a car loan where you're upside down, and I've made this mistake in my early days of doing Turo and buying cars because I was buying multiple cars. I ended up buying cars at higher prices, higher interest rates because this was my 4th, 5th, or 6th car loan. And I just didn't really fully understand the effect that depreciation has on a car on the Turo platform, particularly because we have such high utilization because it's being rented out, right? And people are driving way more than you would if you were using it for your personal use. So what do you do in a situation like that? Well, the answer is you're kind of in a pickle, right? It's very difficult to find your way out of it. Now, normally the first thing we would say is, hey, okay, if you're in a car where the loan to value is not matching up, you're upside down on it, Well, one of the things that you might want to try to do is refinance at a lower interest rate. But we know that these days, interest rates are through the roof, right? They're still sitting at between 6 to 10%, depending on if you're buying new or used, you're going through a credit union, how hard you're working to get a good interest rate on your vehicle. Those days of having the 1%, the 2%, I mean, those are long gone. In fact, on my Audi that I just sold, I had a 0.09% APR. I mean, that's unheard of these days, right? But we were in that ZERP environment a couple years ago, which means, 0% interest rates on loans, which was some of the best times to borrow. So refinancing, not really an option. Now, the other problem that Turo hosts are running into is that unfortunately, the market has changed so much. So your day rates have significantly come down to where it's becoming more and more difficult to turn a margin on your vehicle, particularly if you bought within those 3 years where you had a high car payment because the car prices were high. So now a lot of people are either taking a small loss or they're barely breaking even on these vehicles because those prices are so high. So it's a difficult situation to be in. And in my opinion, I only kind of really see a couple of things that you can do. Number one, you can keep the vehicle for the life of the loan and just do your very best to max it out in terms of rentals and rental income until that loan is paid off, right? And that's just kind of like a kind of a no-brainer option, and maybe not the solution that most people are looking for because they don't want to deal with the maintenance issues that come with the cars as they get older and older and they accumulate miles. It becomes very difficult to deal with. So what do you do if that's not really an option? Well, then your next option is to try to sell it privately, right? Like I love services like Car Gurus where you can go, you can get the value of your vehicle, you can create a listing, try to sell it privately, and that's typically where you will get the maximum value for that car, which could then leave you in a position to where you might have to cover just a small gap between what you owe versus the money that you're getting for the private party sale, right? That's probably where you're going to get the highest value, but you might still take a little bit of a hit. Now, you could plan for this financial hit by renting out your vehicle and really maximizing your day rate and baking value into your listing and really making it shine amongst the other cars in your area. And then putting some money away to kind of deal with some of that negative equity that you might have to pay off. So that is another option that you can do. And then thirdly, one of the things that I just helped a family member of mine sell a car that they no longer needed. It was paid off. But one of the things what I did was I really shopped around for values, right? Let's just say you don't feel like you're savvy enough or comfortable enough to do a private sale, and maybe you don't want to meet with strangers and having them come test drive your car. It is obviously a very involved process. But when I was helping one of my aunts kind of shop around for the best value for their car without having to do a private sale, I consistently found that the highest value that I was getting without doing a trade-in was actually selling it back to a brand dealership of the car, right? So if she was selling a Cadillac. So I reached out to any of the dealerships selling Cadillacs, and that's where I was getting the highest offer from. Now, an interesting thing that happened in the process of me helping my auntie sell her car is I noticed, because we're not in any rush to sell that car, after a week of like putting in an offer or submitting the car for purchase to a local dealership, they kept coming back to me a week later. They increased the offer by $1,000. 2 weeks later, they increased the offer by $1,500. So what that goes to show me is that actually that initial price offer that they're going to give you at the dealership is a baseline, and there is room for negotiation. Now, that's also one of the tactics that I used for selling my BMW 6 Series a couple years ago, made a video about that, and I got the highest value from actually the dealership that I purchased the car from. Now, originally, they were like a couple $1,000s off from what I wanted on the car, but I was able to go in and actually negotiate with them to give me some more money on the car. So I do love the idea of, if you're not comfortable with doing a private sale, going to the dealership, because just from personal experience, shopping everybody from your CarMaxes, your Carvanas, anybody out there who is looking to purchase a vehicle, I have consistently found that the dealership that is the same brand as your car and that is local to you is typically willing to pay the most money. And not only that, there is negotiation power there. So that is probably one of my best recommendations. And literally, just from these last couple of weeks, what I experienced yet again is that's where I was getting the highest value offers from, with that kind of room for negotiation. So I think that if you find yourself in that position, you only have these three options, really, in my opinion. But if you guys think that you've come across something else, definitely drop a comment below, because it would be so helpful to a lot of people in the Turo community who are experiencing this. One is you keep renting it out and, try to max out your rental income for the life of the loan and pay that loan off faster. So that's probably the key thing that I forgot to mention is when you're renting that car out, if you can pay more than just the car payment on the loan, well, then you're paying down the balance of that loan much faster, meaning you're going to pay less in interest, right? So if it's a 6-year loan and you ended up paying it off in 5, well, you're saving a year's worth of interest, which is eventually going to be less than what you would have ended up paying, right? So it's going to put you in a better financial position. Then you can try to sell it privately, which is where you would probably get the most value on the car. And then thirdly, you can try to sell it back to a dealership of the same make of your vehicle in your area and try to negotiate a much higher value. So I know it's difficult right now because the Turo market is not performing in the way that it was, 4 to 5 years ago. There's so much saturation in the market that makes it very difficult, particularly for cars that have higher car payments and that are not receiving a high enough day rate in the marketplace. It's really hard to kind of get that business to continue to grow, and it's very hard to grow your fleets. And especially with the higher interest rates, it makes it even harder to put yourself in a better financial situation. So these are really the three things that you want to consider. And so hopefully you try to implement some of those stuff and put yourself into a better position. And we will continue to monitor the day rates and hope that in the summertime we see a little bit of peak. But it does seem like, due to the saturation in the market and kind of the position that your everyday consumer is in, where they are still feeling the effects of high inflation, meaning the cost of the necessities in their life have gone up, right? Groceries, food, living expenses, rent, mortgages are higher than they used to be. People just don't have as much disposable income to spend on things like car rentals, for example, right? And so we're going to continue to monitor this and see how the market performs. But in the meantime, these are the tips that you want to utilize. And if you guys have any additional tips that you think would help out some of the people in the host community, drop a comment below and I'm going to catch you guys in the comment section.